India has built systems so vast, so massive, and so unbelievably efficient that they almost feel impossible. These are Indian ideas operating at a scale most countries would struggle to even imagine. After looking at these systems, the only honest reaction is to ask the same question every time. How does this even work? 1. The Mumbai Dabbawalas. Every working morning in Mumbai, roughly 5,000 men collect around 200,000 home-cooked lunches from 200,000 kitchens and deliver each one to the exact right person in the right office in one of the most crowded cities on earth before lunchtime. Then in the afternoon, they carry every empty tin all the way back home. They have been doing this since 1890. They do it with no apps, no GPS, no central computer. Their entire sorting system is a short code of colors, letters, and numbers painted on the lid of each tiffin, a code a semi-literate worker can read in a glance at a railway platform. A single lunchbox changes hands around 6 times on its journey, riding bicycles, handcarts, and the Mumbai suburban trains, and 6 times again on the way back. That is roughly 400,000 handovers every single day, coordinated almost entirely inside human heads. Harvard Business School studied the system and published a formal case on it, titled simply, On-Time Delivery Every Time. In more than a century of operation, the network has barely ever failed. They went on strike exactly once in over 120 years, and even then, not for themselves. When Prince Charles met them, he was so struck that he had to bend his own schedule to fit their timing, and later invited them to his wedding. In an age obsessed with automation, a brotherhood of men on bicycles built a logistics network whose reliability still embarrasses companies with billion-dollar software. The lunchbox always finds the right desk. Somehow it just works. 2. UPI. According to the International Monetary Fund, India now accounts for close to half of all real-time digital payment transactions in the entire world. Not half of Asia, half of the planet. For most of human history, moving money was slow and expensive. Banks charged for it. Card networks took a cut of it. The poorer the person, the worse the access. India decided to treat the movement of money as public infrastructure that everyone simply gets to use. The result is UPI, the Unified Payments Interface, launched in 2016 by a not-for-profit body, the National Payments Corporation of India, under the country's central bank. And the scale it has reached in a single decade is difficult to hold in the mind. By mid-2026, UPI is processing more than 23 billion transactions in a single month, roughly 740 million payments every day. Across the full financial year, the figure crossed 300 lakh crore rupees in value. And here's the part that genuinely defies the usual rules. For the person paying, it is free. There is no swipe fee, no charge to send money to a friend, no minimum. The system was deliberately built so that the smallest transaction in the country is as welcome as the largest. The numbers behind that are staggering on their own. Hundreds of millions of active users, hundreds of banks plugged into one common rail, a success rate above 99%, and it has begun to cross borders, accepted now in places like Bhutan, Nepal, Sri Lanka, the UAE, Singapore, and France. Every other major economy has digital payments. What almost none of them have is a single, free public system that the poorest citizen and the largest corporation use in exactly the same way, billions of times a day. Most experts assumed a network this open would be too costly, too fraud-prone, or too slow to ever reach this scale. India built it anyway. 3. The Kumbh Mela. Kumbh Mela is like a temporary megacity. Most great cities take centuries to build. India builds one of its largest in a matter of weeks and then takes it down again. The Kumbh Mela is the largest gathering of human beings anywhere on Earth, a Hindu pilgrimage to the sacred rivers held in cycles measured against the movement of the planets. And in early 2025, the rarest and grandest version of it, the Mahakumbh, was held at the Triveni Sangam in Prayagraj. The attendance figure is almost impossible to process. Over the 45 days of the festival, by the government's count, more than 660 million people came to bathe at the confluence. It is, by a vast margin, the single biggest coordinated human event in recorded history. But the attendance is only half the marvel. The other half is the city built to hold it. In 2025, this city built around 150,000 tents, more than 450 kilometers of roads, 12 kilometers of bathing ghats, around 150,000 hospitals, toilets, police stations, water supply, electricity, and cameras using AI to manage the movement of millions of people. Tens of thousands of sanitation workers kept the city clean. And the most surprising part is that this entire temporary city was built for around $150 million to host more people than the population of most countries. And then, when the festival ended, the city was simply taken apart. The roads, the grid, the hospitals, the tent metropolis, folded away, returned to sand until the rivers in the calendar call it into being again. A city for hundreds of millions, conjured from nothing and dissolved back into nothing. No permanent municipality on Earth manages crowds at that density. India does it on purpose, on schedule, on a riverbank. 4. Mangalyaan. Reaching Mars is one of the hardest things a civilization can attempt. Roughly 2 out of every 3 missions ever sent to the Red Planet have failed. The Soviet Union failed repeatedly. NASA failed before it succeeded. The graveyard of spacecraft scattered across the void between the planets is large and distinguished. In 2013, the Indian Space Research Organization decided to try, and to do it for an amount of money that frankly sounds like a misprint. The Mars Orbiter mission, nicknamed Mangalyaan, launched in November 2013 and slipped into orbit around Mars on the 24th of September 2014. With that single maneuver, India became the first country in history to reach Mars on its very first attempt, and the first in Asia to reach the planet at all. The cost was about 450 crore rupees, roughly $74 million. To put that in plain terms, India's Mars mission cost less than the Hollywood film Gravity, a movie about being lost in space. It cost around 1/10 of NASA's comparable orbiter, which arrived at Mars in the same week. How was that even possible? Not by cutting corners on the science, but by engineering frugally and brilliantly. ISRO built the spacecraft small and light. It reused proven hardware, and it accepted a modest design life rather than gold-plating every component. That modest spacecraft, built for 6 months, kept working for almost 8 years, sending back images and data on the Martian atmosphere. India then printed the spacecraft on the back of its currency. The world's space establishment had spent decades and billions of dollars learning to reach Mars. India arrived on the first try, using technology built largely at home. Engineers around the world studied the budget and shook their heads. It should not have worked, but it did, and it worked perfectly. 5. Chandrayaan-3. On the 23rd of August, 2023, the Vikram lander of Chandrayaan-3 touched down gently near the lunar South Pole, and India became the first nation in human history to land there. Only 3 countries had ever achieved a soft landing on the moon at all: the Soviet Union, the United States, and China. India became the 4th and the only one to reach the South Pole, a region so rugged and shadowed that everyone else had stayed away. Out rolled a small rover named Pragyan to study soil that no machine had ever touched. The lunar South Pole matters enormously because its permanently shadowed craters are believed to hold water ice, the single most valuable resource for any future human presence in space. India planted its flag scientifically on the most coveted real estate on the moon. And again, the cost was almost absurd, around 600 crore rupees, under $75 million, less than the budget of many space movies. The engineers achieved it partly through a philosophy they called failure-based design. Instead of assuming everything would go right, they built the lander to survive almost everything going wrong. Sensors failing, an engine cutting out, the craft arriving off target. Vikram was designed to land safely anyway. The data it gathered was then shared openly with researchers across the world, including NASA's own future moon program. A nation that had crashed 4 years earlier had just guided humanity to a place it had never been and handed the map to everyone. 6. Narayana Health. Even though heart surgery had existed for almost 100 years, it was still too expensive for most people in the world. A surgery that can cost $100,000 in the United States was, for most of humanity, simply out of reach. You were born, you developed heart disease, and, depending entirely on geography, you either got fixed or you died. A surgeon named Devi Shetty looked at that and refused to accept it as the natural order. In Bangalore in 2001, he founded what became Narayana Health on a radical idea. Apply the logic of the factory and the supermarket to surgery. Buy equipment in bulk. Keep surgeons on salary instead of paying per operation. Run the operating theaters at high volume every day so that fixed costs spread across thousands of patients. The cost of an open heart surgery here falls to somewhere around $1,000 to $2,000. The Wall Street Journal called him the Henry Ford of heart surgery. Critics worried that this assembly line approach would compromise quality. It did the opposite. The hospital's mortality and infection rates have been measured as comparable to the best hospitals in the world, and the human core of it is what makes it extraordinary. Shetty's instruction to his staff was simple. No one who comes here is turned away for lack of money. The well-off pay a little more for a private room. Their payments quietly subsidize the poor in the next ward who receive the identical surgery. Heart operations for baby girls are fully covered through donations. The man who built this was once the personal physician to Mother Teresa, and he summarized his entire philosophy in one line. Charity is not scalable. Good business principles are. The model has now spread to dozens of hospitals and tens of thousands of beds, and even to a hospital in the Caribbean, where it delivers care to international patients at half the cost of nearby Miami. 7. The pharmacy of the world. Now step back from one hospital and look at the bigger picture. India does not only make healthcare cheaper for Indians, it helps make healthcare cheaper for a large part of the world. That is why India is called the pharmacy of the world. India supplies around 20% of the world's generic medicines by volume. It also produces around 60% of the world's vaccines. These are the medicines and vaccines used by millions of people across Africa, Asia, Europe, America, and other parts of the world. For many diseases, the difference is huge. A branded medicine may cost several dollars. An Indian generic version can cost only a few cents. That small difference decides whether a family can continue treatment or not. This is especially important for diseases like HIV, malaria, tuberculosis, cancer, diabetes, and heart disease. In many countries, treatment became possible only because Indian companies made the medicines affordable. And India is not just selling medicines. India has also sent medicines, vaccines, medical teams, and emergency supplies to other countries during health crises and disasters. During COVID, India supplied vaccines to many countries. In 2025, after the Myanmar earthquake, India sent medical teams, medicines, and relief material under Operation Brahma. In 2026, India also sent emergency medical supplies to Africa to help with Ebola response. But the most quietly powerful part is what India built for its own people through Aushadhi. Aushadhi stores sell quality generic medicines at prices much lower than branded medicines. These are not luxury hospitals or private chains. These are simple medicine stores meant for ordinary people. In 2014, India had fewer than 100 Aushadhi stores. By 2026, the number had crossed 19,000. These stores now sell thousands of medicines and surgical items at prices that can be 50 to 90% cheaper than branded versions. That is the real scale of India's medicine system. One country is supplying affordable medicines to the world, sending medical help during emergencies, and also bringing down the cost of medicines for its own people. The world's biggest pharma companies spent decades making medicine expensive. India just keeps proving that quality medicine can also be affordable. 8. IRCTC. Indian Railways is one of the largest things India operates. It is among the biggest rail networks on Earth, and on any given day it carries somewhere around 24 million passengers, more than the entire population of many countries, across a subcontinent every 24 hours. It is a moving civilization, perpetually in transit, and India had to solve a deceptively simple problem inside that moving world. How do you feed it? A traveler boards a train in one state and gets off in another, a day and 1,000 kilometers later. The journey is too long to carry fresh home food, and the old solution, buying whatever a platform vendor was selling, was difficult. So the railway's own arm, IRCTC, built something, a system to deliver a specific hot meal to a specific person in a specific seat on a specific train that is constantly moving across the country. A passenger now places an order tied to the unique code on their ticket. The system knows which train they are on, which route it follows, and which stations lie ahead. At a chosen station along the way, the meal is prepared by a vetted kitchen and handed up to the right coach, to the right berth. In the brief minute the train pauses at the platform, it runs across hundreds of stations, through hundreds of kitchens and food partners, and now folds in modern delivery apps so that ordering dinner to a moving train is as easy as ordering it to a house. The broader railway catering operation handles on the order of millions of meals every day. Think about what that requires. Not feeding a fixed city where the customers stay still. Feeding a constantly moving river of 24 million people, delivering the right plate to the right moving target, again and again, across a continent. It is the everyday miracle Indians barely notice. And it is one of the most quietly complex logistics systems on the planet. 9. The Jio movement. For a country with this many people, getting online used to be a luxury. As recently as 2016, a single gigabyte of mobile data in India cost somewhere around 200 to 300 rupees. Data was something they had to carefully save. A video, a call, or even a few downloads could quickly become too costly. Then Jio changed the entire equation. In 2016, Reliance Jio entered the market with free data for months, and after that, prices so low that every other telecom company was forced to respond. The real achievement was not just that Jio made data cheaper, it made the internet feel ordinary. And once data became cheap, everything else started moving faster. UPI payments, online education, video streaming, food delivery, digital tickets, small businesses, creators, and millions of people building their lives through a phone screen. Before this, India was far behind in mobile data use. After Jio, India became one of the biggest mobile data consuming countries in the world. The average Indian user now consumes huge amounts of data every month. That is what makes this movement so important. Jio did not just sell data, it made connectivity affordable at a scale almost no country had seen before. In many parts of the world, fast internet is still treated like a premium service. India turned it into a mass product easily available to the masses. 10. The Jaipur miracle. In a Western country, an artificial leg can cost anywhere from $5,000 to $30,000. In 1968, in Jaipur, two men created what would become known as the Jaipur Foot. One was an orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Pramod Karansethi. The other was a master craftsman and sculptor named Ram Chandra Sharma. Between them, a doctor's knowledge and an artisan's hands, they designed a prosthetic foot out of rubber and wood that did something the expensive Western limbs could not. It let the wearer squat, sit cross-legged, walk barefoot across a muddy field, climb, even dance. It was waterproof, so it survived the monsoon. It was built around how Indians actually live, not how a laboratory in the West assumed people should walk. And it cost to make around $45. The famous Indian dancer Sudha Chandran, who lost a leg in an accident, was fitted with the Jaipur Foot and returned to classical dance. A story so powerful it became a feature film. But the idea only became a phenomenon because of how it was given away. In 1975, a man named Devendra Raj Mehta founded an organization, BMVSS, to manufacture and fit these limbs entirely free of charge, regardless of nationality or ability to pay. A patient can walk in, be measured, and walk out on a new leg the same day in a matter of hours, where a Western clinic would take weeks. That organization has now fitted well over 1.5 million people and has carried the Jaipur Foot to dozens of countries, to war zones, to disaster areas, working alongside the Red Cross to help the casualties of conflicts the wearers never chose. Time magazine has honored the design. Its overhead is kept below 4%, so that nearly every rupee donated becomes mobility for someone who had none. The global prosthetics industry is built on high technology and high prices. A surgeon and a sculptor in Rajasthan proved that the most important thing a limb can do is be affordable enough to actually reach the person who needs it, and then they gave it to the world. 11. Aadhaar. Aadhaar is the largest biometric identity system ever built. For most of independent India's history, a huge share of its own people had no way to prove who they were. And in the modern world, if you cannot prove you exist, you are quietly locked out of it. No bank account, no benefits, no phone connection. You become invisible to the very systems built to serve you. In 2009, India set out to fix that, not for a few million people, but for everyone. The result is Aadhaar, a single 12-digit number issued free by a body called the UIDAI, tied not to a document that can be forged or lost, but to a person's own body. 10 fingerprints, both irises, a photograph. The very first number was issued in 2010 to a resident of a village in Nandurbar, Maharashtra. By late 2025, the system had generated more than 142 crore numbers, over 1.25 billion people. By the government's own measure, close to 99% of India's adults are now enrolled. And here's the part the experts said could not be done at this scale. Every single enrollment has to be checked against every other one to guarantee that no person and no fake, no duplicate can ever hold two numbers. That means comparing each new set of fingerprints and irises against more than 1 billion records already on file, again and again, for years. Most assume that duplicating a population this size biometrically would either buckle under its own weight or never be accurate enough to trust. But it worked. Aadhaar became the quiet bedrock that UPI, in half of digital India, now stands on. 12. The public distribution system. Through the National Food Security Act, India hands subsidized or free food grain to more than 80 crore people, over 800 million human beings every single month. 5 kilograms of wheat or rice per person distributed through a network of more than 5 lakh ration shops that reaches from dense city neighborhoods to villages at the very end of the road. And since 2023, for the people it covers, it has been free. Plenty of countries try to feed their poor. Almost all of them eventually hit the same wall. At scale, the food leaks. It goes to people who do not exist on paper. It vanishes somewhere between the warehouse and the village. And the bigger the country, the bigger the leak. India runs the largest food distribution program in human history, and it runs it for more people than live in the entire United States twice over. India bolt the food system directly onto the identity system. Ration cards were linked to Aadhaar. A fingerprint now confirms that the person collecting the grain is the person entitled to it. Tens of millions of fake and duplicate cards simply evaporated. And under a reform called One Nation, One Ration Card, a migrant worker who has traveled 1,000 kilometers for a job can now walk into any ration shop in the country and draw the grain his family is owed. 13. The Election Commission of India. Imagine being asked to conduct an election, not for a city, not for a country of 50 million, but for nearly 1 billion eligible voters spread across deserts, mountains, dense forests, tropical islands, and some of the highest inhabited places on Earth. That is exactly what the Election Commission of India does. Every general election, it coordinates what is widely regarded as the largest democratic exercise in human history. To make it happen, over 15 million election officials, polling staff, security personnel, and volunteers are mobilized. More than 1 million polling stations are set up across the country. Millions of electronic voting machines and VVPAT units are transported, tested, secured, and deployed with military precision. But the astonishing part isn't the numbers. It's the lengths India goes to ensure that citizens get a chance to vote. Election teams trek through the Himalayas carrying voting machines on their backs. They travel by camel across the Thar Desert, by elephant through dense forests, by boat across flooded rivers, and even by helicopter to isolated mountain villages. Sometimes an entire polling station is established for just one voter. In the Gir forest of Gujarat, a polling booth has repeatedly been set up for the sole resident living within the required distance. The logic is simple. In Indian democracy, one vote is never considered too small to matter. Every electronic voting machine follows a tightly controlled chain of custody. Political parties witness the sealing process. Security forces guard storage centers around the clock. Voting takes place in multiple phases so that personnel and equipment can move safely across one of the most geographically diverse nations on Earth. And when polling ends, the entire country waits together. Within hours, votes from hundreds of thousands of polling stations begin flowing into counting centers. The outcome of an election involving nearly 1 billion eligible voters is usually declared within a single day of counting. No other democracy operates at this scale. Many countries struggle to organize elections for populations a fraction of India's size. India repeats this exercise every 5 years, while also conducting regular state elections across dozens of states and union territories. One of the most complex operational systems humanity has ever built. Step back and look at these systems together, and a single factor runs through all of them. The common factor is not money. Most of these were built with very little. It is not luck. It is a way of thinking that treats enormous scale not as an obstacle, but as the starting assumption. A willingness to look at 1.5 billion people and ask, how do we serve all of them? And then to build the thing, even when everyone says it cannot be done.